Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. I am Leonna Abraham Brandao, host for Blog Talk Radio, Shedding Light. Our special guest today, C.J. Bao, Trinbagonian, activist residing in the Newhallville section of New Haven, Connecticut. A mother of two amazing young adults, student, Black feminist, and lead organizer for Black and Brown United in Justice. And I'm just going to bring her in now. CJ began her advocacy path by sharing a weekly list of grassroots events across Connecticut, which ultimately led to her activism on the front line, bringing awareness of social injustices. CJ hosts a podcast of her own, The Sound of Black and Brown, a platform she uses to amplify the movement, and she is what many of us call a fierce advocate for many and confident in the power of the Black and Brown people coming together to change the cycle of disenfranchisement, stigmatization, and devaluation, which has enslaved communities far too long. So let's please welcome our guest to talk more about her passion and work. CJ, are you on with us?
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you?
I'm all right. A little bit of a
start
there. Sorry about that.
CJ, I know you were having problems getting into the studio. One of the things we've been having a lot of problems with, and I believe it has a lot to do with the government, is because Shedding Light is exposing a lot of people, and it's also exposing corporations and the Department of Corrections and so many others. So we've been running into some problems, and thankfully you were able to finally get in. But if you can, please introduce yourself to the audience and tell a little bit more about yourself.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for inviting me on and for having me. I am so grateful for this opportunity and to be here with you. I am CJ, a grassroots organizer located in New Haven, Connecticut, originally from Trinidad and Tobago. As previously mentioned, I have my own platform, a podcast as well, The Sound of Black and Brown. And, I was inspired to do this work not only by my own experiences, but just by being in community and being with others who have struggled against this system. In fact, my first instance that drew me here was actually the case regarding Calhoun College, which is a section of Yale University. At the time, it was called Calhoun College, which is named after a slave owner. And I was actually on the steps of the court watching the dishwasher who got so frustrated. He was an employee. And so he got so frustrated having to come to work and see these images of slavery every day. He threw something at the window and broke the window, and he was fired. So one day I come across the protest for his case, and that would be the day that would change my life. And, it just opened the door to so many things, because all these years as an immigrant, Black immigrant in this country, so confused by this being the land of the free, and only to see how enslaved we are. Motivated by that and many other circumstances within my community, I decided to dig deeper and to start organizing and to start inspiring others to get involved, and encourage them and let them know that no act is too small and no voice is too weak. We all are in this together, and we have to fight together. So Black and Brown United in Action, we are focused on lifting the voices of the lesser spoken, the lesser amplified, the Black and Brown people, our stories, our concerns, and that could be anything and everything. We're primarily focused on feminism, but as we all know, feminism is intersectional. It is intersectional, Mass incarceration falls in there, food, job insecurity falls in there, educational barriers, climate change, that all fall in there. And I'm glad to do this work. This is selfless work, and in this work I get to meet people like you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, CJ. I'll tell you, I relate to what you're saying. I really do, and I've experienced it myself. I have my only child was caught up in that system, and I remember going to Ghana, West Africa, one time getting off the plane and I felt like I finally belonged. You know, it was just so different, and the hospitality is so different than you find in the United States. In this country, there's so much hatred and racism and anger and frustration and vengeance and retaliation, and it just goes on and on and on. But I relate to what you're saying. So I wanted to ask you to speak a little bit more on your show, on your platform, so that the audience maybe find some interest in actually checking it out and actually going to your studio as well sometime.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. So in our work, part of our work was actually, if I may, getting people to actually get vaccinated. And I'm mentioning that because at that time we're all in quarantine. And out of that, a lot of things were realized, for me anyway. One of the most glaring things is how miseducated or the lack of education on the fundamental things, I found myself in conversation with my own friends questioning, like, what do you know? Like, are you sure that's true? And so after much contemplation, I decided to go for it, and I launched my podcast, The Sound of Black and Brown. And, we're very strict here. You have to be Black or brown to be on the podcast because, again, just like the group, it's all about amplifying the lesser amplified, the Black and brown people. So on this podcast, we're talking about different issues, whatever is contemporary, and sometimes things that are not historical, but matters which matter to us. And it's very blatant. I'm going to say things that might sting, especially for those with privilege, because it's going to be the truth. It's going to be how we see it, how we know it. And it's going to force you to maybe learn or relearn some things that we didn't even know we knew, as far as how much we allow for subliminal racism and white supremacy to exist amongst us. And by that I mean, here in the Northeast, there's a lot of subliminal racism, right? A lot of white supremacy is normalized, and some of our own don't even realize that. So this podcast is aimed to speak in those truths and to provide a space for others to do so as well.
I understand that part because I just heard on the radio, on the television today, that police officer, that woman that shot that young man, she got 2 years and she's out in less than 16 months. She's out. And I often think of how overly populated the prisons are with people of color. And if that had been a black police officer or whatever, they would still be in, I'm sure. But these are some of the injustices I totally agree with you on.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Absolutely, because I just want to hit on something you said there, because it's absolutely correct. Let's look at it like this, right? And this is a topic that I've been bringing up a lot on the podcast, the issue of gun control. Now, another thing that Black and Brown United in Action does, and we use the platform, the Sound of Black and Brown, the podcast, to share on this, we're very involved in the legislative efforts. We do believe being part of the lawmaking process is quite important, because these are basically the policies and procedures, for lack of a better way of putting it, which will provide guidance, for lack of a better way of putting that, right? And one of the more recent ones was HB 6667. Now, this is a bill that's meant towards gun control. And let me tell you something, Leonna. The response was sickening. So many Republicans came forward to defend their right to own a gun. It was never about your ownership. That's a federal thing. This is about making sure that we have a process in place that really gets down to who owns these guns, because, like I mentioned on the Sound of Black and Brown, we're not the ones, meaning Black and Brown people, we're not the ones that you're often going to see running up in a mall or a school or, somebody's driveway, garage or whatnot, shooting up people. It's not us, okay? Mm-hmm. And Black and Brown people tend to hold a label for gun violence when it really isn't ours to own. First of all, who were more violent as slave owners? And going back to the prison system, so many of our brothers and sisters are serving some ridiculous terms over petty charges. So to hear that this woman will just walk away, and she has a reason, right? Because when they do it, it's mental health. When we do it, we're violent. Well, I hope something changes because we saw recently the young lady, the white woman got shot in a driveway. So let's see how they feel about gun violence now. That's all I'm going to say.
Mhm. That's the truth. I agree with that. That's for sure. You know, it doesn't make sense. Every day you're hearing about it. You know, it's so simple just to have anyone that wants to apply for a license to carry, have them take a psychological evaluation. You know,
yes.
Get some info. They don't even come up with ideas like that. You know, they're just so bent on having weapons.
Let's talk about the police, because this came up here. So I also have attended some police commission meetings here in New Haven, and I wonder if people really know the truth about what happens in terms of training. So, for instance, we work closely with our allies, Stop Solitary CT, regarding police reform, and we have been pushing for a civilian review board. Well, of course, you know, we need the community to get involved because we have to hold these people accountable. Now, in all of this work, we found out some things as well. Like, we found out that the psych evals that the officers are taking is outdated. That's dangerous. That means we're not properly evaluating these people, and we're giving them a gun, and we're telling them to protect community. So if that's what's happening with the police officers, just imagine, like, I have received information regarding our corrections institutions out here. I mean, I've seen pictures of correctional officers, white correctional officers, sleeping on the job, man. Really? Really? You know, and they're going to get a pension for that. They're going to get a pension. I've heard stories from black and brown correctional officers about the harassment they incur from their co-workers, because best believe it's like the skinhead nation in there. They're very blatant with their racism, and, you know, their biases are not secret. You know, they slack off and they abuse their power, and it goes on and on. And this is why I appreciate platforms such as yours, because you need to talk about this. Again, our brothers and sisters are sitting behind these bars suffering. I wonder if people would feel different if they saw what happened when the COVID first started. Just to know that these folks had nowhere. I mean, in my work, we also do immigration reform, and we heard stories from the detention centers where the guards would come in and just picture like all these people just grouped up in one main room. That's what they were doing to the prisoners. That was their way of social distancing in the prisons. Now, one would think that a better idea would be for us to really look back at our system and say, maybe we need to review some of these cases. Maybe some of these should have been thrown out. Maybe some of these, you know what I mean? These charges were kind of ridiculous. We didn't do that. Instead, we found ways to fund the animosity towards black and brown people even more. We found money to fund guns more. America loves violence, Leonna. It is what it is. It loves it.
Exactly. One of the advocates was telling me that he belongs to a group. He was telling me that they're going to be focusing on having judges, black judges, brown judges, handling cases, crime with the people of color, because they don't get a fair, people do not get a fair chance if they go in a courtroom to fight their defense when the jurors are primarily white. They usually put one or two, maybe three people of color on a jury, but somehow before the case comes up, they manage to get rid of one or two as well. So that's a big issue too, with jury duty, with the case involving white, black against white. These are issues that need to be focused on. And I'll tell you what you just mentioned is sometimes these people are doing this and they're throwing it in our face. That just like this woman that just got out, this police officer that just got out, and that 17-year-old that shot up 2 or 3 people during a protest one time, and his case was dismissed. It was right after that we started hearing about a lot of mass shootings by teenagers.
Yes. Yes. Because we made it fashionable. You see, America will always have the money and resources to fund the school-to-prison pipeline, okay? That is always on the budget, always, in any way, shape, or form. America loves violence. Look at the shows. Look at the TV shows. Look at even like music videos now. I remember growing up, the music videos, would be fun. You used to look forward to seeing Michael Jackson's newest video because you wondered what would he do. Now it's all about the violence. You can't even go see a movie without there being violence of some way, shape, or form. I want to know what the hell is going on in your life that you need to have an AK-47. Like, this is a bigger conversation. But again, you're asking about those people. Let us not forget, my friend. Those people went ahead and stormed the Capitol 2 years ago. And they acting like, none of that matters. We haven't had any fluid updates.
I have a question on that one. Had there been somebody from Africa or the Middle East, they would have been getting a life sentence. They would have been in a life sentence. How is it that we have domestic? We have domestic terrorism in this country, and they do nothing about it except give them a slap on the hand.
You know what they do? They validate it. They validate it. You see, because anytime a white person commits mass terrorism, because that is what it is. It is terrorism. But when they do it, it's larger-sized. It's normalized, right? It's, and the problem with us as black and brown people, we're so used to being resilient. I think, with COVID, think about it. We all sat down when we're supposed to be under quarantine. The whole world is fighting against this COVID-19, and we had to watch George Floyd, mother.
Even during the pandemic.
During the pandemic.
Jeez.
Think about it. Before the pandemic, there was this going on. And actually, they say we're over the pandemic. We're still in it. People are still getting sick, right? But the point is the gun violence is astronomical. Highest in the world. In the world.
Yeah.
And that's without a doubt.
I think gun violence got worse. It got worse after Donald Trump became president, and it hasn't stopped. It hasn't stopped since. No, because he's the epitome. That's the thing, right? So let's touch on that for a second, because I get particularly annoyed. I get more angry with the black and brown Trumpers, to be quite frank, because I ask myself, are you really that confused? Like, do you not have people around you to educate you? Because how could you support this man? Do you not see what he represents? But every time I run into or hear somebody being a Trumper, it tells me a lot about themselves too, right? Because how could you know what this man stands for and be okay with it? And you're absolutely correct, because even here in Connecticut, there was a Trump parade, right? And they had a Trump caravan, and this thing went across city lines. This is in Connecticut. That's supposed to be so progressive, okay? And these people were dedicated to that caravan, let me tell you, right? They had their own guards, and that's another thing. Notice that the Trump supporters are always carrying. They talk about the black power groups and the black groups, right? And the fact that, they talk about the Panthers and the fact that we armed ourselves. Well, why wouldn't we? What are we supposed to do? Sit there and say, shoot me? Like, what are we supposed to do? We're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. Again, we're not saying that everybody is innocent, but there are people on the state budget right now. We're spending money to keep people in jail. And we didn't even talk about what happens in jail. How about the fact that a lot of these states fund rape? What am I talking about? I'm talking about the frisking that they do of the prisoners when they go to search the cells, or they just announce a search. This isn't done privately. This is done in front of everybody else. How would you feel if you're sitting there minding your business and this person just comes, drags you off your little bed, and then starts to sexually assault you like that? How would you feel? And this is all part of the state budget. This is something that is normalized. It's rationalized, just like use of force, right? Use of force is always rationalized. Well, you want to protect yourself.
Well, what if there's another way? Why aren't we learning from countries like Norway, okay, that has one of the lowest incarceration rates in the world? How did they do that? They did that by using the prison system for what it was meant for, as a means of correction, not a life.
No.
America made corrections a life. America likes slavery that much. It likes to reinvent it, and that's what this is. And that's why I warn people on the Son of Black and Brown, you're going to hear me use expletives, and you're going to hear me use some references that might sting. Well, also for the Black and brown people, particularly those who support people like Donald Trump, you need to hear this. Our people died, and people like that were quite supportive of it. Best believe it. This man, if he could, he will get rid of you. Trust it. I know it.
You know what I get so upset with when I see people in back of him in the crowd that are of color, and I'm saying they either have to be getting paid to do it. They have to be getting paid, because how can you be with somebody?
Enough. I'll go broke. I'd rather go broke. You're not paying me to stand up behind that.
Not $1 million. But this is what they do, and I get so upset too, because our own Black and brown leaders need to do more, because they formed, and you don't hear, the only thing you hear from them is when they have virtual meetings or they're looking for money, and this really upsets me. Or if somebody dies, Ben Crump and Al Sharpton, all of them, after the fact, and they need to come forward now.
Right. Well, and a lot of Black and brown people, lo and behold, and again, this to me is something that COVID brought our attention to. See, we're so used to being traumatized, I don't think we know where to put the trauma anymore. Because here's the thing with our Black and brown spiritual leaders. So in my little country, Trinbagonian, my country looks like a Timberland boot. And in my country, you go to church to, get the spirit. You want to pray. You want to, receive God, however you see it, whether it be Allah, whether it be Jesus, however you believe, whatever that looks like to you. You go to your place of worship, you go home. In this country, the more profitable the church, apparently that's where Jesus likes to go. So see, again, greed in America has thwarted so many things. Now let's go back again to our Black and brown spiritual leaders, the leaders of color, the pastors of color and so on. Remember, when COVID was happening and people were looking for somewhere to go, remind me again, where did T.G. Jakes send people? Nowhere. Right? But he made sure to collect your tithe money, and he made sure to remind you that Jesus will only love you if you give him 10% of the little piece of check you have. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like something that should be in the Bible. That doesn't sound like a God loves people.
No. And I'll tell you, when I was in Ghana, a lot of women, people were coming down the aisles with homemade bread, fresh bread that they made, and things like, it wasn't money because they couldn't afford it. And now it's I watched, and Dr. Charles Stanley just passed away 5 days ago, but T.D. Jakes, he was on television. He's been on Tyler Perry's show. He's an actor. It's just like these presidents, Ronald Reagan and all these people that were in celebrities running a country they know nothing about. But this is really mind-boggling. Is why these people in the churches, Jesus came into this world as a savior, or some say that, like the Islam will say a prophet. He was a great prophet. He himself said it in the Bible. A prophet is not honored in his own home. But he came into this world with nothing, sandals. Right. He even instructed his disciples not to ask for anything when they went out preaching. If it was given to them, take it, accept it, but don't ask. And here we have churches that are just constantly about money.
Right. Yeah, no, because think about it. We have a housing insecurity problem right now. You would think, maybe she does it and it's not advertised, who knows? But I'll just use this person as an example. Where's Beyonce as far as saying, okay, I'm gonna donate X amount. Please match me. I think, look, right here in Connecticut, we have 19 millionaires. And I dare say if those millionaires by themselves were to, come together with a pool of money, they could have brought some money but they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that.
Oprah
it's
Winfrey.
All about the separation of wealth. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, come on.
When I was in Ghana, the money I spent in Ghana, Oprah Winfrey started a school out in Africa, and she was being interviewed by Diane Sawyer or Barbara Walters or one of them, and Oprah Winfrey had these diamond earrings on they blind you, and she talked about the money that she spent in Ghana or in wherever it was, and I got so upset because they said to her, well, what is it you want the public to know? And she says, well, I'm not no Mother Teresa, I want people to. And it really upset me because what she spent in Africa, most likely I could have spent just around the same amount. And it was a lot to me because I'm not rich. But for her, it was like a drop in the bucket. And that's what happens with our celebrities here.
Petty cash. It's petty cash because she's probably going to write it off. Not for nothing. We're not trying to discredit her. But at the same time, the math is the math, right? Because even when she would give away the cars, right? She's giving away all those cars. That money is nothing to her. She gets to write that off. This is why a lot of these celebrities start these nonprofits, because they figured out this is a way that I could do it. I'll still look good, right? Everybody will say, oh, I love you. You're amazing. But in reality, what did they really, really do? Nothing. Nothing. How is it that Beyonce, just going back to her for a second, because Janet Jackson, I'll give her credit, she's having a concert. Now, out of curiosity, I was just looking at the tickets. Now, I don't plan to go to either because I have to pay my bills. I don't have money for that. So bless the hearts of all the people who have the money to go to these things, by the way. But I looked at the tickets for Janet Jackson and Beyonce, and I am not spending $1,500 to see Beyonce. I will say that out loud. Right now with Janet, were there higher price tickets? Yes, but she still had the option. Like you could still go get a ticket for I think like $25. But that would be like the main. But I get it though. I get it. At least she had the option. Beyonce, you had to call in. It was all this hype, and you had to call in, and then they have to call you back. It's all of this going on, and then they'll see if you get selected, and then you get to pick your seat. Like, it's all this big, big hype. I am not spending in this time and now $1,500, and that's one of the cheaper seats. That's one of the cheaper seats. And sad. That's sad.
In other words, it's benefiting people with money maybe, but people that don't have the money that would like to go see her, there's no option. No option at all.
No option at all. And I would think, you would think after all the devastation, you would never think COVID happened in America by the way these celebrities are carrying on. I mean, let's be real here. The government did a horrible job of re-entering. Because let's be real. We didn't do it to the same extent, but COVID-19, we all did solitary confinement. We all were in jail. It was just the same as being in jail. And so many people got so frustrated. Now, you're not literally in jail because you still have a working bathroom, a bed without bed bugs, and a fridge that you could go to get your food, right? And people were losing their minds. And the government did nothing to re-enter. Where's the public service ads telling people, well, if you need mental health support, call this number. Or if this bothers you, call that number. There's nothing like that really happening. The road rage is out of control, at least in the Northeast here. There's a lot of road rage happening. People are in shambles. The government did not care. They just left us.
Yeah. We have a serious problem with mental illnesses in the United States and addictions. And instead of throwing all these people in prison, they need to start establishing some really successful establishments as far as facilities, long-term residential treatment facilities. It can be 5, 10, 15, 20 years, but it's not going to be life, and it's not going to be death row, and it's going to have, professionals, experienced people.
Correct. correct. And bring back after-school programs, right?
Exactly.
Bring back the after-school programs. Bring back the before-school. See, that's what we need to be asking for. We don't need more police. We don't need a bigger jail. We need real resources. We need real housing solutions, right? We don't need Section 8. It's not about homelessness. We need a house. The home is the feeling you get inside when you open the door. The house is having 4 walls to call your own. We need housing, right? We need to stop punishing people. If I went to jail and I did my time, I shouldn't be doing double time.
No.
Especially if I had an offense that wasn't worth that. Like, there's some offenses. I mean, let's be real here. If we were to really look at white-collar crime, guess who we'll find and guess what we'll find? I don't see anybody getting as angry as those who caused the 2008 recession. Remember that? The housing crash and the stock market crash? How come people aren't mad at that? But you're so quick to get, agitated and annoyed at the black and brown, the people of color, okay? It's without a question. I mean, really, put a group of ants in a container and watch what they do to each other with no water, with nothing, just the ants. And watch what happens. They're going to start climbing on top of each other. Why? Survival of the fittest. They're trying to get out of their hell. They're trying to, make it. It's the same thing that happens to black and brown people living in poverty, okay? People are looking for a way out. Instead of saying mental health, say mental wellness as a means of acknowledging that in the black and brown community, mental health is stigmatized. Why? Because slaves were tested. That's why. Because we've seen what's happened to our own people when medical experiments happen. That's why we have so many people who won't go see therapists, who won't go see doctors, who think that abortions are there to kill black and brown people, who think that the COVID vaccine is a way of the white people controlling us. I mean, these are people really thinking this. Why? Because of the history and impact of slavery. But in saying that, white people have done things, astronomical things. I mean, we could go on for days, and it does not have that stigma. These people were put in houses in the Social Security and names of their children, babies, 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and we act like that didn't happen. What's wrong with this picture?
It's still going on in the prisons too. The modern day slavery. They have these prisoners, these large corporations, making billions of dollars, and these prisoners are getting like 90 cents a day, 96 cents a day, or less. And what is that all about?
Right. Well, because it's about the profit, right? And the thing is, what folks don't realize, it is about the money because it's privatized, most of it, right?
Yes.
So somebody is making money off of somebody else's torture. How do you feel about that? That's disgusting. And we're not saying that these people are living in tolerable conditions. I mean, look like just the other day, the prisoner who was eaten alive by bed bugs.
Oh. And how about the other one? The other one that was scalded to death in the shower.
You see?
That was in Florida. This is the kind of barbaric system that we live in this country. Yes. And the legislative, I am so upset with we're having this thing, and I know by now you probably heard about it, but in June, where we're going to have mass calls and letter writing and emails to the media, legislative members. It's going to be about abolishing the death penalty, but ending solitary confinement, bringing in independent providers and everything. But what's happening is these legislative members, they need to go into the prisons unexpectedly, not even announcing that they're coming in, because prisoners have told me so many times that when the DOC knows they're coming, they clean up their act.
They fix it up, yes.
The media never goes in. The media reports one-sided stories. That's it.
No, because out here, one of our legislators, she encountered that, right? She was told by a staff member, try not to announce when you're showing up. And then when she showed up, they were like, oh, I'm sorry, we're doing some stuff. They tried to buffer it.
Yes.
They tried to buffer it. Yeah, and she's a black legislator. So, of course, trying to get through that was not easy. Eventually, they let her in, but it was obvious because you could smell like, from what I understood it to be, you could smell like the bleach, you know what I mean? So, obviously, they tried to whatever they could do real quick to make it look better, but this is a fact. It's a fact. You should not have to give warning as a lawmaker. You should be allowed to show up whenever you feel like. It's an audit. You have to hold these people accountable. Hold them accountable because, again, I've seen pictures of corrections officers sleeping on the job, and they're getting paid for this.
Jeez.
Mm-hmm. And that's happening right here in Progressive Connecticut. Right here in Progressive Connecticut.
Even with the media, they can go over to see. They've been going over to Ukraine. They've been going over to Poland. They've been going over to all these countries with all this stuff going on over there. When in fact, if they can go to other countries, they should be able to go into the prisons and meet with these incarcerated individuals and at least hear from some of them what's going on. As a matter of fact, there was supposed to be an incarcerated individual, Reginald Clemens from Missouri, who wanted to call in tonight because you were going to be on, and so he's been incarcerated since he was in his early 20s on a wrongful conviction. Another one, Christopher Dunn. If you go on the internet, you'll see a judge dismissed his case and found him innocent years ago, when he was in his late teens, early 20s, and they're in their 40s and early 50s now, and they still haven't been released. These are wrongfully convicted. Right.
And we don't talk about that. We don't talk about the fact that there's so many people who have petty charges and wrongful convictions. If they were to sit down, and guess what? You could create jobs doing this work. Like, you could hire people to help go through these files and find these cases. This is all doable. You don't need to have a law degree to do this. You could hire a group of people to help expedite it, make it a project, put some money in the community and make it right. But you have to want to do that. But there's so much money being made off of the prison system. I mean, let's go beyond the prison, right? Let's talk about the fact that there are white-led nonprofits that take up the re-entry space. So that in itself is a problem because you go from one jail to another, literally. Right? These halfway houses, who's looking at these halfway houses to make sure they're to par? My understanding, most of these houses, these halfway houses look like junk houses. You know what I mean? They're run down. They're not nice at all. And they're managed by slumlords. So it's a whole cycle of incarceration meant to break you, meant to, make you feel hopeless. It really is meant to do so. And you add COVID on top of that, it's just even worse. I mean, I've always had this one suggestion that it is a state-level fix. I've always said that you must have us, black and brown people, people of color, whichever way you like to word it. You need to have us in leadership and other roles, right? We need to be there, us being part of these conversations. Both the conversations and the execution is very, very important. One of the things that they could do in Connecticut for the school system and for mental health purposes, they could change the certification process so that if you are looking to be a teacher or a social worker, you don't have to worry about, what your expenses are going to be like, because the problem is how they do it. Your internship is like 4 months back to back. Now, most black and brown people come from working families. So if I'm going to school to be a social worker or a teacher, my immediate stop point is when I realize, crap, how am I going to live for 4 months without income? Can't do it. The state, what it could do is say, look, let's change that, make it, more viable for working people, and you will change up your pool of applicants. But you see, a lot of these jobs are geared towards privilege. Look at even corrections officers. Most of them have some sort of military background. What does that tell you? What are we really doing? Are we really trying to make our society better, or are we just trying to maintain the white supremacy? I'll go with the latter.
There's a lot of people that have been in the military that have gotten these jobs as law enforcement or COs or prison officials or whatever. And there was one in Pennsylvania, who was so bad he went into the military, but they spoke I forgot his last name, I can't remember it. But anyway, these people that are even stormed the White House, a lot of them were military.
Mhm.
But the Department of Corrections right now, even law enforcement, they're having a hard time recruiting police officers and also correctional officers because they have gotten such a bad reputation now. No one wants to be around the police.
Right. And because, again, why would you want to be there? Like here in New Haven, Connecticut, there are several cases of Black and brown people attempting to become police officers, and there's always something that they find, or there's always something that we can't make the finish line. So many barriers. So you see, again, aside from the use of force part, it's the part with how do we even qualify, right? You're more willing to take in a veteran who's most likely to have some level of PTSD, okay? You rather employ that person and give them a gun or have them at a prison as opposed to someone who does not have that background. What's wrong with that picture?
Well, look what they're doing also. They're actually willing to take high school dropouts as long as they get their GED. And you know, there's a lot of these young punks in school just looking to get a job in a police department or a prison to show their true colors, to get in with their gang, as you call it. Police, I consider police being gang members too. And correctional officers, they can be gang members. But can you imagine bringing people in to do that kind of work that just have a GED?
Right.
Mm-mm.
No. You should go through both the police officers and the corrections officer. Anytime you're doing anything with a gun, you should have to do an extensive psych eval. That has to be extensive because I need to know, when given the choice, what your decision would look like. Instead, what happens is they promote the use of force and they justify it by saying we have to protect and serve. There are many instances when the police could have, or corrections officers could have de-escalated, but they like this use of force. It's what they rely on. And also, let's not ignore the fact, right, that when questioned or when it was made known, some of the people involved in that attempted coup, I call it an attempted coup, on January 6th, were military or part of corrections or police officers. My understanding, that's part of why they don't want to say the names. Because, even here in Connecticut, it's known that there was a bus that left Connecticut to go up to the Capitol. And you would never know that from the media. I mean, here's the thing. If it was, like you said, if it was Black people who did it, all their faces, it would be all over the place. But let white people do it, and it's like, oh, they did that? Oh, look at that.
It's unbelievable.
Yep. It is.
It's disgusting. That's what it is. It's disgusting.
It's disgusting.
The sad thing is there's a lot of whites throughout the years that have seen this racism, seen such injustice, and they want to help. They want to work with us. But at the same time, the majority is just, they're all for conservative and Trump and all that. When those men did what they did at the Capitol, I think it was 2 or 3 police officers actually committed suicide after that. And still, the maximum that any of them got was, 2 years or 4 years? This should have been life. Right. They talk about life. I mean, this should have been more than 2 to 4 years.
Right. Because remember, they hunted down the Black Panther Party. They made sure anywhere they could find the Panthers, they made their life uncomfortable. So if you could do that to them, right, what's the difference here?
Exactly.
The difference here is the shade. That's the difference. You see, when they do it, they justify it. When we do things, we are to be punished, whether it's right or if it's wrong. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, all the great leaders, Marsha P. Johnson, they all were attacked. And what did they do wrong besides try to spread awareness for social justice? You know, look at what's going on with your podcast. People don't think or, you know, even put that into consideration. The risk we endure by having our platforms. I'll have to tell you the truth. I've had to endure some stuff myself, you know, nails in the tire, broken window, you name it. It's happened. It's happened. Yeah. You know, because people like America likes this hate. It likes to know racism is there. It doesn't want to get rid of it. I mean, look how long racism has existed in this country that claims to be so free and so accepting and all these big, beautiful words that it is not.
That's the problem with this country. It's ego. This country is like Nebuchadnezzar in the Bible. And the government feels as though they've accomplished everything and they know what they're doing and everything. What they've done, they've destroyed this country and they've destroyed so many other countries. But, you know, the thing that's so sad is this country was built on the blood, sweat, and tears of people from other countries. Africa, the gold and the diamonds, you know, the Middle East, the perfumes and the oils, they have benefited. And sometimes that's probably why they're going off to war. Not that they had to, because those countries couldn't even reach us at one time.
And you see, if America cannot have it, they'll destroy it. Like, look at what's happening in Sudan right now.
Oh,
right?
Geez.
I mean, yeah, I mean, the poverty that this country has created in so many other countries. You look at what's going on with the immigrants migrating, traveling through the border. Well, let's get real with that history, right? America came in and took what they had. What did you expect these people to do? What did you expect to do? You know, America has to deal with itself. And, you know, one of the things that I try to also mention on the Sound of Black and Brown is that white people need to challenge their fellow white people. You need to get them to stop. Because, I mean, it's it happens on the job. We're getting it on the job. We're getting it when we go in the streets. We're getting it. It doesn't matter where we go. We're getting it. And one would think with all these different publicly and nationally and even internationally recognized instances of racism, you would think it would stop or put a dent or something, and it hasn't. If anything, it's getting even worse.
You just said it. You know what? That's exactly what needs to be done. The white people, the Caucasians that side with the people of color, you just said it. They need to challenge their own race, because their race is what's suppressing all of us. And if they're truly in sync with us and want to join us in getting rid of all this hatred and racism, they also need to be challenging their own.
That's right. Instead of taking it, that's why I mentioned the white-led nonprofits. You know, we don't need the white saviorism. That's just as bad. Less discrimination is still discrimination, right? And a real white ally, in my opinion, because I know quite a few good white allies, and you know what they do? They don't want to get the notoriety. They don't want to be seen. They want to support me in doing what I do, right? They don't want to take up all the space. You know, Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, spoke about the camera. The camera is the white man's narcotic, right? Now, we as black and brown people, we need to understand what that means. That means that do not let ego and agenda be what guides you. If ego and agenda guide you, you're going to be just as bad as they are. Now, we could talk to our people, right? And we could talk to our own, and we could say, listen, this gun violence, let's stop making the gun violence fashionable. Let's make it unfashionable. Let's make life fashionable, right? We could do that with each other. but the white people have to address each other. See, we could oppose them and we could challenge them, and I'm not saying that we should not or there is not black power, but for racism to truly be addressed, we need the white people who get up and stand up with us, to get up and stand up and oppose those who support the racism, challenge those workplace rules and behaviors, challenge the laws, challenge the school system, talk about it in a way where it includes us as well. Don't just cater to our own needs. Talk about the need for free after-school programs. Where's our trade schools? All our trade schools disappeared. They became profit systems. Talk about that. We need those things back, right? Talk about the fact that Section 8 was exploited, and we need to look at it like we need the white people, because here's the thing. These white people sit in high places, very high places. And if you doubted that, once again, I will always reference COVID. Because when the vaccine started rolling out, who got taken care of first? Okay? You see? So we need these white people. So, this is why, again, on the Son of Black and Brown, I encourage white people to listen, but I also warn them and let them know, I'll say some stuff that will sting. It's going to sting because it's a lot of learning and relearning behavior. Even with the black and brown people, especially with those who got socialized differently. What I mean by that is that some of us grew up in the white neighborhoods and we don't realize how much of that behavior we actually absorbed. Okay? To the point we don't know how to talk to each other. We don't know how, and we look down instead of realizing maybe I have a little privilege. I actually have a little privilege. Maybe that's why I don't connect. You got to learn and relearn.
Exactly. I think sometimes our own, when they do get a little, when they get a little bit of achievement, and they're up there with especially even in government, and they're up there with the elite, they tend to forget too where they came from. And I remember years ago when I first became a social worker, I would associate with anyone that was of color in having cookouts with beer and wine and all that. I remember one time my oldest brother said to me, Leonna, now that you're getting up in the world, you have to start watching who you associate with. And I told him, I said, you know what? I said, I will never forget where I came from. Never. I will never forget those that I was around all my life. He may have, but not me. And that's the way it should be. You shouldn't have to, you know right from wrong, and that's all that should matter. We can be a good influence on those we associate with, no matter what these people are about, whether they're good or bad. We can be a role model just associating with them and letting them see how we are.
And we have to protect each other too, right? We have to remember some of us had some real painful existences. How would you feel if you had to grow up drinking flour and water, or eating rice and butter, or not knowing why mom was gone for days and will reappear, or not understanding why dad always had this weird look in his face, not knowing these things. Again, it's bad enough as black and brown people, we were taught not to acknowledge our trauma. In fact, when we do acknowledge our trauma, we take it out on each other, and that's the part that we need to realize. Even in our houses, when we get angry, we get mad at each other. Now, white people, when they get mad, give Gregory some space. We have to understand. They know in their adjectives. We don't. We don't use that. We're ashamed to admit that there are days when we feel like crap. We're ashamed that there are days when we feel emotional. We're ashamed to say we have days when, we acknowledge a part of ourselves. We were taught that we have to look strong. When a black or brown woman speaks her mind, all of a sudden she's the angry black or brown woman, see? So it's all about challenging these change of white supremacy. And this is why the white people need to step in and step up. all the problems we have described, there are white people in those spaces. They need to be brave enough. I think if anybody was looking for inspiration, let's look at what happened in Tennessee and realize with those two Justins who walked out, or shall we say were told to walk out, let's pay attention to the time that we're in and realize we don't have the clock on our side. So people with privilege, specifically the white people with privilege, we need them to say, all right, enough is enough now. Enough is enough. We want this to be different, and to do that and mean that, and not just give us, tell us what happens at the table after, but make sure we're at that table too, because representation matters.
Exactly. We have to have representation at every table in this country when it comes to things like that. Years ago, it was called the CEDAR program. I don't know if you're familiar with it, if you were around then. The CEDAR program, and they also called it Job Partnership, where people that were of poverty, not only poverty, but the average citizen, that didn't have the opportunities others have, they had it so that you could get jobs. The government would pay so much, and the businesses would pay so much. One girl, she ended up becoming a data entry operator for a social service agency. Others were doing really good until President Reagan came in and he did away with it. I don't know if it might have John F. Kennedy might have brought it in. I don't know, but they did away with that. And just like you mentioned, trade schools, they're doing away with all these vocational schools, where you go into the cities and you see all these rundown buildings that they could bring the vocational schools in with their professors, their teachers, and others in the community, and rebuild these torn down buildings and use them for those homeless or the formerly incarcerated or something.
Yes. There's enough real estate. There's enough land. There are schools that have been, structures, all of it. You could use that for different purposes. These could be after-school programs. These could be, a community library / after-school center, all of it.
Exactly. Even to use some of these prisons, when these, like in Massachusetts, they closed down Walpole State Prison. It hasn't been completely closed, but they're working on closing it completely. Take a place like that and turn it into a facility where they can actually have some kind of programs in there and prevent crime instead of just keep adding to it.
But see, that's the word right there, right? Crime prevention. We're not doing that. Because you see, if you prevent the crime, then guess who you don't get to incarcerate anymore? You see? So rather than prevent the crime, why not? There's money there. And us as Black and brown people, we need to get better about challenging that, right? Because you see, we allowed ourselves to get engulfed in this hate. We need to learn how to love each other again, right? Again, going back to the pastors in these churches, some of these people really work my last nerve because you're preaching out of both sides of your mouth, right? You're talking about Jesus, 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 but then you're also judging people all the time. All the time. You would think after what COVID did, where are these religious people, religious leaders? Where are they? Why aren't they leading the charge talking about the mass incarceration and the joblessness and the housing insecurity and the food insecurity? Where are they? They're quiet. Why? Because they can afford it. They can afford it.
And a lot of them on television. Okay, they're preaching to the choir, as they say. They're preaching to the choir. It's the ones they need to go out to those who cannot get to them. And as you say, mass incarceration, go into the prisons. Even during the pandemic, the pastors, the chaplains, the imams, the rabbis, none of them were going in to meet with the prisoners during the pandemic. And I don't even know if they're doing it now.
Not at all. You didn't see that at one time. It was the march. Where was the concern for those behind bars? Nowhere.
Nowhere. They don't care.
Definitely Joe Wilson did not open his church doors for nobody. Right? But guess what? You better make sure you give him 10% of your income. because if you don't, Jesus won't love you.
I was watching them on television all the time. I got to the point where I don't even like to watch it on television anymore because it's all about money, money, money. And same thing in the churches.
Right. They turn everything into money, and we have to be the ones to say, okay, call the crap, call it. Don't just sit there and I would expect for this year to see more people speaking up and speaking out. I mean, we have to do it. The injustices are continuing. Watching what's going on with these different mass shootings. I mean, enough is enough now. And then while all of this is going on, our black and brown brothers and sisters are being thrown in jail for nonsense. Some of these charges, that's the other thing people need to realize. They like to judge those who are incarcerated, and I bet you if they heard some of the charges of some of these folks, you'd be like, wait, you're in jail for what?
Yeah.
For what? Come on. But the system was designed to do that. It was designed for that. It was designed to create this loophole of where you would have people stuck in this way. It's doing exactly designed to do. And what we need to do, we need to collectively say enough is enough and educate each other, because, again, there's a lot of relearning and learning that needs to happen. There are too many black and brown people who are completely ignorant of their own history. And it is very, very sad. Black history, Latino history, this should be in school, and this should not be a question, right? Because we need people to understand where they came from in order to know where they're going next.
That's it. Education. And I tell you, there's a lot of people in prison who had good jobs when they were out. They had a lot of them in college. They were never involved with the law. Some of them victims before becoming offenders. There's so many people stereotyped, but there are so many people incarcerated that just had a bad break. And a lot of times people don't tend to look. That's why I keep hopping on the fact that the media needs to go in. They need to report both sides. We have prosecution. Prosecutors that are so corrupt, they will lie. We have, there's, as they say, there's he's an author. His name is Casey Sherman. He was going to write a book on a prisoner that he grew up with, not associated with, but they went to school together. And he was talking about that person. The person was never involved in the law. He was a good person, good reputation, hardworking, always in school. But he said, Casey Sherman said that he and this individual double dated, which they never did. What happened in court when it came out that this was the individual's first relationship that he entered into, and the person that he was involved with cheating, was lying, was deceiving, using, and they said he had never been involved. It was a first-time relationship. But Casey Sherman put that in. The first thing he put in the paper was we double dated, as though he was doing it in the very beginning to make sure that this person's credibility would be questioned. Come to find out, he was friends with the victim's family, and the victim's family are mafia. Is that how they say it? They're connected. So these are the kind of things, and the person he was talking about is a person of color, a black person. Casey Sherman is Irish and Jewish. But these are the kind of things, and the prosecutors lie. There's so much corruption out there that people don't stand a chance. And the media, again, just reports one-sided stories.
Of course. Well, the media is whitewashed, right? The media doesn't care about me and you. The media cares about what sells, and what sells is our oppression. What sells is showing us as being, people who are so dependent or so needy, but yet so violent. We're so vile. We're vile. And that's what the media does. It's whitewashed, right? It tells the side of the story that suits those with privilege, and it creates that segregation all on its own. Look at what happened when Trump went in for his arraignment. When have you ever seen every Jacksonville station.
That was a farce. That was a farce. I could not believe it. He got arrested, right? Who gets arrested and go into the courtroom and out like he's walking in the store and walking out again?
Yeah.
I never heard anything
Oh,
close.
I love the part when he stopped to look at the camera. I thought that was cute. But, and that's the thing. This man is dangerous. He should really be in jail because he is going to incite violence. He's going to do it. It's just a matter of time, and it's already starting.
Well, Braggs
So
might be. Braggs, the DA, he's trying his best, but he's still getting opposition because what's the Trump? What's that person's name now that wants to be involved? And once he's involved, they're not going to have anything secret. This man is going to get away with it because our legislative members are afraid. The government's afraid of Donald Trump. I never saw anything like it.
No. Well, the Republicans know how to stick together, whether they're right or wrong. One thing they'll do that the Dems don't do, and I'm not a Republican, nor am I a fan of the Republican Party, but one thing we can count on the Republicans to do, they'll stick together. Even if they don't all agree, they'll stick together. The Dems, on the other hand, they have a very bad problem of letting their emotions publicly flare at each other. Yes. And you see, the Republicans take advantage of that. The Democrats should have known, just based on who has the House majority, you should be plotting, you should be planning. Stop fighting with each other, man. Stop fighting with each other. The priority should be empowering, supporting, and protecting Black and brown people because that is who the Republicans will attack first and hardest.
Well, we have a weak Democratic Party right now. I'm sorry to say it, but Biden has been weak from the beginning, and they see it. The Republicans see it.
Oh, yeah. They're seeing right through it. And it doesn't help, again, the media. They have media outlets, not even just one. They have several outlets that are dedicated to promoting their narrative, okay? And that's the thing. The Democrats, let's just be real. America is past the two-party system. Start there. It should no longer be a two-party system because that's part of the problem, right? We need to have choice. We need to be true to our words. Open up the floor a little bit. Why does it have to be a two-party system? What has having this two-party system really done for everybody? Nothing. Besides create more chaos. And it's going to continue doing that for so long as it continues to go on.
Exactly. They need to have an independent. They need to have a Democrat, Republican, and an independent party. That's what they need to have. Maybe there'll be more neutrality or something with that.
Yes, absolutely. Like even if it's just like you say, an independent, but it cannot just be two parties anymore. It has to be all three on the ballot. It can't just be the two. It has to be all three. And we could fight for that. But you know what? To do that, people have to vote. And we have to realize now is the time when our votes matter the most. The most. It don't make sense to complain about it. We're not going to do anything about it. You know what I mean? You got to do something about it, too. You can't just be part of the problem and not part of the solution. Or at least you cannot speak to the problem and not speak to the solution as well.
It's like the two that are running. Biden and Trump are going to be running again, but they need to have – there has to be others. There has to be alternatives to those two because I wouldn't vote if it has to be just those two. Who I'd like to see, well, we have in Massachusetts Congressman Ayanna Pressley. I'm hoping that she'll run, but also, what's her name, Alexandria Cortez in New York. She seems to be really an aggressive fighter, and that's the kind of leadership that needs to be in.
I'm not a big AOC fan, I'll be honest with you. I'm not big on her because I find her to be performative. And I feel like, on the immigration standpoint, she really hasn't done enough for me to say, okay, yeah, she's down. I can't get with her. Leanne, however, our young friend who just got thrown out of house there, she's somebody who I definitely I'm looking at, because she to me has done more. I always mispronounce her name. Ilian, is it Ilian? Is that how you pronounce her name? But she took
Ayanna Presley?
No, not Ayanna Presley. Hold on, let me look up her name. I know who I'm talking about, but I always mispronounce her name. She's way more progressive and way less performative, in my opinion. Let me just find her real quick. Of course I can't. Let's see here. But yeah, no, we need to. Well, here's another thing too. We need to look at that. We need to look at the funding requirements for people to run for office, because the truth of the matter is, it's in a way where you and I can't run unless we plan to run on the street. But to run for office, it is expensive, right? And that's another barrier. Like, there's so many barriers to our engagement in reality. We need to start calling them out, and we need to call them what they are and demand that they're changed, period.
Yeah. There has to be some alternative, some other options than the two that are. Now, one of the Kennedys just stated he was going to be running for the presidency. Now, I remember John F. Kennedy and I remember Robert Kennedy. Those two were assassinated. The mother at the time was afraid to have any more of her sons running because for some reason there was some kind of death threat, it seems like, against that family. But
right.
The Kennedys had property on the street I grew up on. There was a club at the end of our street. And Old Man Kennedy and the owner of this club were good friends. And they made it so that nobody could do anything to take away that club. That time is over, though. But the Kennedys, from that point on, the Kennedys out there today, a lot of times people are saying that they're, this one that's planning on running has issues of his own. So I don't know what that's going to do to the race, but I hope others at least apply or try to become, start a campaign. Others mentioned Michelle Obama. I don't know. I know her husband can't run again.
I don't think she's going to run. I mean, I think that they're trying to capitalize on the legacy of the Kennedys. I don't know how far that will go right now. I think people are just at the point where, this gun violence is beyond ridiculous, and people want answers, and they want people who will give them the answers, and will also, be real about it. Give us real answers. We still don't know what happened to the water in Flint. We have no idea. No clue.
They never resolved that?
No.
Jeez.
We still don't know. There's so many things that go under the radar because this media plays along with the game. And that is what it is, the media.
Alabama and Mississippi, they seem to be getting hit hard all around with everything. It's one thing after another in those two states, but they've always been like the suppressed, the difficult.
Yes. Times. Well, that's what we're seeing. It's being exasperated now. I mean, the current economy is just making the obvious more obvious, in my opinion.
And you mentioned Calhoun State that in Georgia. I remember when I was doing national work, that's one of the things. Calhoun State, Georgia has some racist areas in prisons too, and that's been talked about a lot. I don't know. I have a friend that lives in Atlanta. I stayed with her and a friend, Fatima, one time, but Georgia has its share of extreme racism too in some areas.
Virginia too.
Yeah.
Delaware. A lot of
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Massachusetts.
Yeah. Oh,
but like you say, there's a lot of people that you mentioned earlier. There's a lot of people that don't see it. I don't know if it's because they get pats on the back and they want to pretend that they're not what they are, but there's a lot of people that accept the things that go on in Massachusetts and think that there's I don't know. I'm not going to get into all that, but it's out there.
Yes.
A lot needs to be educated.
Absolutely. 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 Yeah.
So tell us, when do you run your shows?
It's a weekly podcast, and usually episodes will air either Wednesday or Thursday. It's been kind of wavering lately because of us being in our legislative session. So what will happen is that sometimes I'll just pop up there and, have an episode because, we're all fighting for these different laws and everything. So on the off chance, there might be 2 podcasts in a week, but generally speaking, it is either on a Wednesday or Thursday latest. We're a newer podcast, so we are still growing, but it's there, right there on Podbean. You could find it if you put in the Sound of Black and Brown, or you could go on Google Podcasts and listen for free.
Okay.
We like free.
I might be sending some people your way to maybe be interviewed. As they say, the Reginald Clemens and Christopher Dunn are 2 brothers that are wrongfully convicted, been in for some time. I had at one time the founder of Black Lives Matter prison chapter out of California, and there are some that are able to call in and at times, and they want to get their stories out. So
right.
whenever possible, if possible, I can refer them to you to see if maybe you want to.
Absolutely. Yes, and I'll definitely love to have you on. We'll definitely continue this conversation, no doubt. No doubt. And if you're looking to return, that's not a problem either, because we need to do this for each other, We need to support each other. We need to put this messaging out there, and we need to ensure that it is there, period.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You want to give the audience your contact information and anything about your show?
Absolutely. So our show, again, is The Sound of Black and Brown. You could go to podbean.com and put in a search for The Sound of Black and Brown, or you could go to Google Podcasts. It will show up there too. Or even better, you could follow us on social media, Facebook or Instagram. Look up Black and Brown United in Action. We're also on TikTok. Black and Brown United in Action is put in a search. Or you could email me, blackbrownunited@gmail.com.
Thank you, CJ. And again, I hope that you will come back, because this is, as you say, it's very much needed. We need to have these discussions more often. A lot of times people are saying, we're tired of hearing about this racial issue, but they don't realize it's something that it can't just go away because it's going on every day. There's incidents that are happening every single day involving something or someone of color. And it's not only with the people of color, it's with the government itself. It's with this country itself. Now, you mentioned Sudan. Mm-hmm. Sudan right now, they say that there's people in Sudan that don't even have water. Everything's been cut off.
Correct.
People don't have water. They don't have food. And here we are all these months, a year or whatever, supporting everything that's going on in Ukraine, when, in fact, NATO should be helping out with their countries instead of all of the countries. Not even all of the countries. Right now, Joe Biden has spent so much money in this country, so much money and weapons, and bringing these people out of Palestine to put them into surrounding areas of Ukraine. And here, this country itself is falling apart, and people in Sudan are starving now and without water. And what is this all about? I don't understand this at all.
Right. Well, you got to follow the money, right? Now, I myself, being an immigrant, I'm all for people being a safe space. Don't get me wrong. I get why people migrate. But in saying that, we have problems right here that should not be ignored. And if you're going to help countries, let's help the ones that have the least opportunity for support, right? I don't see anybody rushing to go help Venezuela. I don't see a long line rushing to do that. I don't see a long line rushing to help India, the people in India. So we have to realize that a lot of these things are being done for ulterior motives,
Yeah.
I mean, and we have to call it what it is.
Exactly. I hear Guyana's being progressing really good. They're really building a lot in.
Yes, it has. And, the islands have its ups and downs, but, a lot of these little islands, they're sticking to their own. A lot of them didn't qualify for help from the United States. So they decided, you know what, we'll just figure it out. And they're prospering, and good for them. Good for them.
Mm-mm. It's sad because even states in the United States, look at, Haiti's not in the United States, but Haiti, Puerto Rico was a part of the United States, and they had their devastating thing happen to them. I don't know if these people have come out of it yet, and there were all kinds of people, celebrities and athletes and government, people in the states talking about how much they're going to collect all this money to send over there. They should have built a whole new country with the money promised, but they're still not even out of the mess they were in years ago. They built this, they're getting all this money in this country, and I don't know what they're doing with it. And now I heard the Speaker of the House now, McCarthy, talking this earlier today about the debt ceiling. They're going to be a lot of people right now that have been getting some benefits. Those who can't afford it are going to be hurting because they're planning on taking away a lot of these benefits that have been in place all this time.
Yes. Yeah. It's about to get real interesting. It's about to get really interesting because a lot of people, for example, what's going on with Husky renewals right now, a lot of people have lost their homes and their addresses. So how are they going to find out what they need or receive notification that they have to update their information to continue receiving benefit? And apparently none of this matters.
No. Low man on the totem pole. I still feel bad for those children that were separated from their parents at the border and spent all that time in the. They said they didn't even know who. They never kept track, so they don't even know who the parents were to the children. Where are these children now? What are they doing to these kids? When I think about all this injustice, I feel so bad for those kids and for the parents. I think a lot of the parents even got killed being sent back. They probably did more than just deploy them.
Right.
But anyway, CJ, I want to thank you so much for being on, and I hope you'll let me know when you can come back on again because we need to continue, as you say. We need to keep this going. And
thank you, my sister. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all that you do. It is greatly appreciated.
Well, I'm telling you, you do a lot too, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come on today to talk to us about Black and Brown and the things that are coming up. And I hope you'll join us in spreading the word about the June event because we need everybody calling the media and legislative members, the governors, especially the governors in every state.
Yes.
We need to stop all this.
Yes. Thank you so much.
I want to thank you. And audience, we're going to be closing this episode now. I thank you all for listening in. And you have the information to get in contact with CJ if there's any way you want to volunteer, if any of you know anything that you can do or say to help in what she's doing and what we're doing as June approaches. And I thank you all for being with us. CJ, I look forward to connecting with you again, and we will hopefully have you on within a couple of weeks if you have the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.